a citrus zest. It doesn't have to be like this is a rhubarb ginger marmalade, right? So what makes it a marmalade is the little, well, 2 oranges worth of orange zest that is in there. Lots of recipes will tell you to just take the orange and chop it up, take the zest off, take the orange, chop it up, and put the whole thing in the Cuisinart. But I don't like to do that because this white pith, you know, is bitter, right? It is. Very bitter. And while marmalades have a bitter component to them because of the zest, naturally they have a bitter component, I really don't necessarily want to add any more bitterness. I take the zest off, chop it up roughly, put it in there, and then I just take the pith off of the orange. Let's do the zest so that it's really nice and fine, and then we'll do the ginger next so that it's kind of still a little bit chunky. Now the rhubarb throws off a lot of liquid. You know, you can see in the sugar, of course, as it melts, but this will be a good amount of. Okay, so let's just chop up this ginger and get this going. All right, then we're just going to stir it up. And now there's all this liquid, and I'm going to turn it up on high, and I'm going to let it cook for about an hour. We're just going to let it simmer. We're going to let all of that liquid reduce. We're just going to let that go. We're going to have a little bowl on hand for you to skim off your foam. Do you see all that foam right there? But anything I make where I see foam, I skim it off because that's the more professional way to do it. It's the better, finer, cleaner result that you'll get. You could stir it in, sure, that's no problem. But it doesn't look very pretty. Right, it clouds it. Right, it doesn't look that pretty, and so we just skim off as it comes up. And we're just going to make sure we stir it frequently so that nothing is sticking. But that's a lot of liquid right there to reduce. Then this jam is looking most awesome. I'm turning it down to low. It reduced fast because we had it fire hot. It has gone way down, hasn't it? Yep. At this point, you can adjust. Don't think that just because you're reduced or whatever that you can't do anything about it. Oh, it's in the pot, I can't do anything about it. Now, remember when things are hot like this, our palates are very accentuated and we can really taste all of the nuances. When it's cold and you're pulling it out of the refrigerator and you're spreading it on your bread, it's going to dull your palate a little bit because it's cold. So it will taste less sweet, but it will also taste less spicy. It will taste less of everything. So keeping that in mind, we want to make sure we have a nice, good, strong, powerful flavor in the pot. I found of late that when I go to look at recipes, and maybe I won't try the recipe because I've canned enough to know, but I will look at the recipe and I will say, wow, that seems sweet. Oftentimes you do have to make it first and see if you like it, but generally the recipes I think that are out there are ratios like 1 cup of fruit to 1 cup of sugar. And I think that is way too much. I would cut it down at least by 1/3. So 1 cup of fruit, 2/3 of a cup sugar. Maybe even start with half. And then when you're here at this point, if you feel like it's really not sweet enough, then you can add more sugar, and then the reduction time just becomes a little bit longer, the thickening time, right? When you're making jam, what you're doing, jam, preserves, jelly not so much, marmalade, what you're doing is you're cooking down the fruit with the sugar to the point that if you used a candy thermometer, you'd probably be somewhere at what they call like the ball stage, somewhere around 220 degrees. And that is like molten lava. I mean, if you got that on your hand, that would really burn you. Because, I don't have a thermometer. So what we need to know is the process. So we're cooking it down till it gets thick. And how do we test the thickness of it? We'll take a plate and we'll put it in the freezer. When we look like it's about half, like now, right, and it's pretty thick, the bubbles are nice and big, we put a plate or two in the freezer. So we have a nice cold plate. And what we're going to do is take a little of the marmalade and put it on here. And then put it back in the freezer. And then we're going to chill it, and we're going to wait and see what it looks like cold. Like once we jar it, what is the texture going to be? What is the consistency going to be? And this looks pretty good. I'm going to turn it off. And you do this with everything. If you want to use the thermometer to 220, you could do that, but really the best way to do it is to chill a little bit of it and to see how thick it is. And your thickness might not be my thickness. And when I took the plate out of the refrigerator, out of the freezer, what I would see is when I dragged my finger through it, not only did it leave a line, but it started to wrinkle on both sides when you pull your finger through it. Do you know what I mean? Where it starts to wrinkle? And that's how you know that you're at about that 220, that nice thick stage. Now that you have some stuff, we have ingredients to can, what do? First of all, we get everything clean. We get a designated space for sure. I always put paper towels or a nice clean towel down. Okay, so we have a nice clean space. We have some tongs that have, if you can, that have rubber on the bottom so that they can grip, the jar easier. So what do? We bring our water up to a boil, and then we're going to take all of our jars and dump them into the water to get them nice and hot and nice and sterilized. Okay. You want to wash them first for sure, but you want them to be hot out of the water or hot out of the dishwasher, really out of the water, because even in your dishwasher you don't know if there's, soap and residue. So just hot out of the water when you're ready to can. So you put in the jars and you put in the rings. These are the rings.
Okay.
The jars and the rings, those are the two things that go in. All right, so what we're going to do is we're waiting for our water to come back to a boil with our jars in it and our rings. So then we fill the jars, right, not all the way to the top, leaving about a ½ inch or so headspace. And then we wipe the jars, the top of the jars clean, right? And then we dip the lids, we put the lids for maybe 10 or 15 seconds into the boiling water. And you just do the lids long enough to barely soften the rubber around it. If you keep it too long in the water, then the rubber gets too soft and it won't make a nice tight seal. So when you take the stuff out of the boiling water with these tongs, especially tongs like this that have this ridge, you want to make sure you don't do this and have the water come down and outside. I've done that before a million times, right? So you twist it and hold it on the side and then empty the water out, okay? Okay, now we have our jars filled, right? Our water is finally boiling. Now I would take a clean paper towel or a clean towel, dip it in a little bit of hot water, and and it's fire hot, clean the tops of the jar. Because, oops, inevitably, you will have some stickiness on the top that's going to inhibit a good seal. Okay, and now that this is clean, I'm going to take all of my lids and dump them in here just for a minute. Lids can never be reused. Why?
The seal.
Exactly, because we've already used the rubber, right? So while it's hot, you put it on, and back in the and it's 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's not a like grip. It's just put the rings on tightly, but it's not a death grip. Okay, we want them to be fairly loose because we want the water the oxygen in that little head space to leak out. Exactly. And the water should cover the top of the jars. The rack down there enables the jars not to be bubbling around. You don't have the rack on the bottom. Don't worry, just take a towel, fold it, put it on the bottom, and then put the jars on top.
Okay.
And that's totally fine. Okay. Careful, don't blow your finger.
Coming back again, it's
Don't you love that popping noise?
probably been
I
30
love that.
minutes.
When you push on it, you should feel nothing. It should not pop up and down.
And if it's up,
Now, if it does pop up and down, let's say you don't get a seal. Like this one right here that still is up, I can see that it's kind of up. Can you see that? It hasn't popped yet. Might just be that it's not cool enough yet to do it. But if it doesn't suction down, then you have two choices. One, you can just store it in the refrigerator. And use it first, exactly. Or you can open it up, get a new lid, take out the marmalade, heat up the jar, and do the whole process again. So for one jar, it's not really worth it. So that's a good point too, to kind of think about how you're going to use it, how quickly you're going to go through it, and like for spaghetti sauce or things like that, for sure maybe a quart jar, or you know, big things like that. But you know, delicate little beets preserved in wine or something, or cherries in wine, and you know, maybe a little small jar is nice.